It's WrestleMania weekend, guys, and TNA decided to throw their hat in the ring and have a pay-per-view, TNA Unbreakable. This aired April the 17th, 2025, and we're going to talk about the show. We're going to talk about the pre-show as well, which is, they call it the kickoff, which was a regular episode of Impact that was an hour and 30 minutes before the actual show. So Impact started at 8, and then the actual pay-per-view itself started at 10 o'clock. So there's a solid, almost 4 hours of wrestling that TNA gives you. Unfortunately, only about 40 minutes of it is worth a damn. This actually showed you that TNA is in a rebuilding stage, and their talent roster has been decimated, and the only real watchable people on the product is probably about 5, and the rest are, thank God that NXT guy is there. Listen to the card that they put together for the Impact show. Jason Hutch versus Laredo. He's not the Laredo Kid anymore. He's just Laredo. And Laredo won this match, and I didn't watch it because Jason Hutch, who cares about the good hands? Xia Brookside defeated Jasmine Nix, who was, of course, an NXT talent. Xia Brookside was from NXT UK. That was many, many moons ago. And this match was solid. It was pretty basic, though. A little slow for my taste, considering I think Jasmine Nix is just not used to working singles yet. But Xia Brookside is not too bad. So it was fine. One of the finishes was that Rosemary showed up and spit mist into JC Jane's eyes. That's going to continue this thing going forward, no doubt. And I'm guessing Shotzi's going to show up eventually on this show. I mean, is she injured? I don't know. The third match on this show was Casey Navarro defeating Cody Deaner. Nothing against Casey Navarro, but I'm not watching Cody Deaner. The fourth match was Gigi Dolan and Tatum Paxley defeating Heather by Elegance and Maggie Lee. So Maggie Lee is a new talent signed by TNA, and the By Elegance brand, Heather and Ash, sees something in her and has been trying to recruit her. So since Ash by Elegance is on vacation, Heather teamed with Maggie Lee to fight against Chemical X. And Chemical X actually won the match with their finisher called the Cemetery Drive, which I don't have no idea what that is. After the match, Tatum Paxley and the Meta Girls and Spitfire all surrounded Heather and started yelling about wanting a championship match. Heather panicked and agreed to a fatal 4-way match at Rebellion, and George Iceman almost had a fit that she ended up doing that. So they're continuing the feud between the By Elegance brand and all of the teams that they pretty much have already beaten. I know they already beat Gigi Dolan and Tatum Paxley. They beat them on Impact or something. This is fine. Of course, we know that the Chemical X, meaning Tatum Paxley and Gigi Dolan, they also will be in the running for an NXT or Women's Tag Team Championship in WWE, as well as they will be in a fatal 4-way at Stand and Deliver. So ought to be a very busy time for those young ladies. The next match was Dani Luna versus Jakara Jackson. Dani Luna wins the match, of course. She's actually much better than she was in NXT UK. She has a lot going for her now. I'm talking about Dani Luna. Of course, she was one of the people that was cut from NXT UK. Lash Legend was ejected but refused to leave ringside. Instead, she attacked the security that TNA sent out. And it's a running gag on this show that the NXT talent essentially just disregard TNA rules and regulations. They kind of do their own thing. And I'm hoping that's leading somewhere. I hope that leads somewhere. I would absolutely hate for it to just be that they're ignoring TNA. In the main event of this show, believe it or not, and it almost made me not want to watch the rest of the show, Brian Myers defeated Leon Slater. It's hard for me to get into anything when Brian Myers is involved. Absolute dog shit. Leon Slater has potential, is a young guy, one of the few young guys they have on the roster, and you jobbed him out to Brian Myers, who is a certified bum and has been that for a good 10 years, 12 years. How about 15? Let's go a full route. I don't think he had any real potential anyway. I mean, he's 100% Scotty 2 Hotty level performer. Absolutely sub Scotty 2 Hotty level. And he continues to get pushed in TNA. I don't understand what the bookers have. You know, does he have somebody's NDAs in a lockbox or something? Why do you keep pushing goddamn Brian Myers? Now we get to the main card of the show, which actually ain't much better because they OD'd us on very boring people like Eric Young and Steve Macklin. But we want to go through it anyway. So they're introducing a new championship, the international title, which they are replacing the digital media title with. Very smart decision, by the way, because the digital media title was a stupid idea. And they have decided that because Unbreakable as an event was main evented by the Samoa Joe, Christopher Daniels, AJ Styles triple threat match, that the international championship should be decided in a series of triple threat matches, which gave us a bunch of triple threat matches to get to the final. So let's just get into that first. They had 2 qualifiers for the final. AJ Francis, for some odd reason, was already qualified for this match, which means that his opponents had to wrestle twice. I don't understand this. So AJ Francis won his match, which was over Sami Callihan and Mance Warner. Now, the only reason why they would do that is because Mance Warner and Sami Callihan are wrestling on this show. They're going to wrestle each other. So that was a way of getting around those guys having to wrestle twice. So we got 2 qualifying matches to get into. One is Eric Young versus JDC, which of course is Fandango. And the third opponent is Zachary Wentz of the Rascals. Because TNA refuses to build new stars, absolutely refuses, they decided Eric Young was the right person to win this match. I mean, this company is going to commit suicide. I mean, you're doing some good things by getting rid of people like, you know, Scott D'Amore, getting rid of Gail Kim. You're doing some good things, but you need to sign some talent. You need to get some people in. You can't keep pushing Eric Young enough. The second triple threat match on the show was Ace Austin versus Eddie Edwards versus Steve Macklin. And Steve Macklin won this match. Now, again, there's nothing wrong with Steve Macklin, really, except the fact that he's sans personality. And by sans, I mean S-A-N-S, meaning without. He is without personality. And therefore, he is boring. And that leads us to the main event, which was for the International Championship. This was the final. Eric Young versus AJ Francis versus Steve Macklin. Steve Macklin won the title to become the first international champion. But this match had people leave before the match even happened. People left after the barbed wire massacre. People started heading for the door. There were visibly empty seats when this match started. And it was visibly empty seats before this match ended. And there were "this is boring" chants during the match. If this doesn't smarten people up in TNA, if Delirious can't see this and decide none of these people had any business being in the main event, then he's an idiot too. And just as quickly as he got that job, he should be removed. How do you book AJ Francis, Eric Young, and Steve Macklin in your main event? Why would you do that? You got to be... Look, one thing I will say. TNA needs to go in the opposite direction of what WWE and AEW are doing. WWE and AEW are suffocating their young talent by not doing enough with them, not offering up enough spots and opportunities. TNA needs to be that place where young talent can get an opportunity, get their foot in the door, become pretty well known. They got a guy like Leon Slater. They got guys like Ace Austin. They got guys like Trey Miguel. And they just keep treating them like jabronis. And you pushing... I mean, God, Eric Young is what, 48 or something like that? AJ Francis, nobody likes this guy. He might be cool, he might be funny, but who really likes him? He's not a draw. Nobody cares. And Steve Macklin is more of the same. Nobody really gives a shit about this guy. It's very unfortunate, but this match earned the "This is boring" chant. And some people, they were clairvoyant and saw that this wasn't going to be any good and walked out on it. Also very smart. Now, the rest of the show, let's talk about it. The third match on the show was an open challenge. Moose had an open challenge for the TNA X Division title. The open challenge was accepted by Sidney Akeem, who of course wrestled in NXT as Scripps. This is the young man who came from Cirque du Soleil and who was a gang member before he left home, which was ironically in Missouri. He's from St. Louis, and this pay-per-view is in, I think they said, St. Joseph. So this guy is an acrobat. He's been on the indies, kind of impressing certain people, but he hasn't learned how to wrestle. He's just kind of had the shackles taken off so that he can do more of the handsprings and flips that he was wanting to do in NXT when he didn't really have a discernible personality or character. So he got an opportunity to do a little bit of something here with Moose. And they did an angle where Moose was shoving back and forth with the hockey team. There's like some kind of UNLV ice hockey champion team. I don't know anything about this situation here. It just seems goofy to me. Anyway, Sidney Akeem, of course, he lost. Moose kicked him in the nuts and then speared him to get the win, which is a predictable finish and seemed like it was the finish for every other match that features Moose at some point in time. Also, there was plenty of Alicia Edwards throughout this show. I mean, she was all over the show. This whole thing with the system, I can't believe it's been going on as long as it has been. I can't stand it. It sucks. It sucks so bad. Nobody likes the system. They're not over. It's seemingly dragging everybody down. And yet it still is a thing. It still exists. The most important part of this match, unfortunately, is that Scripps botched his handspring stunner. He does a real Olympic level handspring move that ends in a stunner. And Moose was out of position. So when Scripps went to reach for his chin after he did all of the handspring backflips, Moose wasn't there. And they had to basically redo the spot all over again so that Moose could take the move. And just so Alicia Edwards could pull the referee's leg or something. Jesus H. Christ. What a disaster. Sidney Akeem is the kind of guy that TNA probably should keep around. We'll see if he actually sticks around. He needs to be taught how to wrestle. And I mean, not just do a string of moves. I mean, actual wrestle, And he might be able to do a little bit more in this business. The fourth match on the show is probably the best match on the show, easily, to be quite honest. Santana and the Hardy Boys versus Mustafa Ali and the Namath Boys. This was a fun match. Really like Mike Santana. Of course, the Hardys are moving in slow motion, but they're super over. Jeff Hardy ends up pinning Ryan Namath to win the match. And it's continuing the Santana-Mustafa Ali feud where Ali has been making fun of addicts, drunks and drug addicts or whatever, picking on them. And putting the Hardy Boys on the other side of Mustafa Ali while he's feuding with addicts is a little on the nose. But this was good. This was legitimately probably the best match on the show. Not even probably. It was the best match on the show without a question. All right. The second best match on the show was Joe Hendry and Masha Slamovich versus Frankie Kazarian and Tessa Blanchard. Now, this match came about because Kazarian didn't want to fight Joe Hendry at Rebellion in a triple threat match. He wanted a one-on-one fight. And it looks like Joe Hendry wasn't going to be able to wrestle at all because they had this, Fugazi injury. But Tessa Blanchard has... I guess she's the number one contender for Masha Slamovich, and she's going to wrestle for the belts at Rebellion, and also Kaz is going to wrestle for the title at Rebellion, so they decided to make it a mixed tag match. And Joe Hendry pinned Kaz to win the match. I wasn't all that... Look, I love me some Masha Slamovich. I'm far more interested in Masha Slamovich versus Tessa Blanchard than Joe Hendry being champion. Joe Hendry being champion he's basically white Kofi Kingston. He got there, and now everybody's kind of like, yay, it's nice and all, but ain't nothing cracking really with Joe Hendry being the champion in TNA. At least he's a new face. He's not goddamn Eric Young, but they haven't done anything really to push him forward yet. He hasn't had like a real feud. As long as you still got guys like Kazarian who are basically dinosaurs floating around TNA, this company is never going to move a muscle. You gotta be able. I've been saying every single time I talk about TNA, I end up arguing about the talent, don't I? Why do I do this to myself? Anyway, in Joe Hendry news, this is interesting. Apparently, WWE reached out to TNA to book Joe Hendry for the Raw in Scotland. And TNA rejected this because the creative was that Joe Hendry was supposed to lose a match, and it was going to end up with him feuding with The Miz. Now, we don't know, of course, who he was going to lose to, or what that meant. And I think at the time, Miz was on SmackDown, so I don't know if this is a mistake or Miz was going to go back to Raw. Who knows? But a lot of people are like, WWE trying to beat the TNA World Champion, bro, thought they were marks. And I will say this, I'm glad that they weren't marks. As much as I really don't care that much about Joe Hendry, not wanting to have your main event guy get beat on regular television is probably smart. And avoiding that as much as possible is always a good thing. You know, TNA has done enough to benefit WWE and letting guys beat their champions. I mean, they did let Jordynne Grace get beat too. And I wasn't a fan of that when they did it, but it was necessity because the person who beat her was Roxanne Perez, who was the champion in NXT. So it was fine, but Joe Hendry, who more than likely wanted to be at Raw, probably didn't want to do the job, and it was smart. But the match itself was kind of meh. I just didn't care. It's hard for me to care about Kazarian. I just don't give a shit about Frankie Kazarian. Chris Bay made an appearance. He's up and walking around. He was out there for quite a while, discussing the injury, said he was embarrassed because he wanted to finish the match. Then he said he had a low percentage of walking again, but because of the medical team in Detroit and TNA, his wrestling family, the fans, he beat the odds. He's walking again. I don't expect that Chris Bay will ever wrestle again. And to be quite honest, if you had that kind of a scare, maybe you shouldn't wrestle again. So, but it was nice seeing that he's up walking around. That was great. What was not great, however, was the chant, "You're Unbreakable," which the fans started trying to chant and he was going to let them. But it was very bad. It was like, "You're unbreakable, you're unbreakable, you're unbreakable." I'm like, ugh, this is trash. This is not good. Not good. I mean, the sentiment is there, but it wasn't good. All right, so the co-main event of the evening was the Barbed Wire Massacre, Mance Warner versus Sami Callihan. These two have been feuding since Mance Warner's debut. This is the big blow-off match, and it was bloody, it was violent, it was nasty, it was gross. I did not love it. Did not love it. Certainly not up my alley. Sami Callihan is very fat. He's been fat, his entire career, but he's very fat now. And he's bald. Like, I don't even understand why he has hair at this point. It seems quite ridiculous that his hair is sticking up on the top of his head and you can see the gigantic bald spot there. Get real. Just be a man and shave it all off at this point, brother. A comb over won't even help you. He was dressed like Mr. Hughes for some reason, too. And Mance Warner was wearing jeans, so they were both trying to cover up how much damage they was going to be able to take in this match. So there was some really gross spots. Sami Callihan hit a door with a chair into Mance Warner. Then he squeezed a lemon all over Mance Warner's injuries, and Mance Warner was rolling around. He also threw some salt onto Mance Warner's injuries, and I think Madison threw some salt in his too. They had a bag of salt in the ring. I don't think Sami Callihan needs any more salt in his diet. Look at the size of that man. I don't think he needs any more salt. For God's sakes, lay off the sucker. God damn it. Then the part that really made me want to turn it off, Sami Callihan staples Mansoor's tongue to a door and then hits the door with a chair so that the door would get, come off, and it ripped his tongue and all this shit. And then they start stabbing each other with syringes or a screwdriver. It was one or the other. I think one had a syringe, the other had a screwdriver. Then Sami Callihan pulled out Mr. Sacco, wrapped Mr. Sacco on barbed wire, put him in the mandible claw before hitting the Cactus Driver 97, which is, the power driver when you grab the tights and pull them. And the wedgie driver, as I used to call it as a kid. It was bloody as hell. It was disgusting. I hate Sami Callihan. He sucks ass. Look, TNA has a history of doing these sort of death matches. Usually Abyss would do it, like in the past. Sami Callihan has done death matches pretty routinely in TNA, so this is not like out of the ordinary. But just looking at the physical state of Sami Callihan, I mean, it's like trying to watch Paul Heyman wrestle. Like, this guy is just so fat, so blown up, has nothing else to offer the business. He can't talk. He's very manicky and very much Kevin Owens' pig version. I've been calling him the warthog for 5 years. He does nothing but get fatter, lazier, and more garbage. TNA desperately needs a revamp. I thought that was the point of getting rid of, Gail Kim and Scott D'Amore. But if you're just going to lean into deathmatch shit, which is even really unique because we know GCW is about to have a bunch of death matches on their shows, especially since I think Sabu is retiring this week, to present this pay-per-view WrestleMania weekend, which I get it. You have your own event next week. Why give away too much on this show? But just super serving people Eric Young. Like, get real. I thought, in my heart of hearts, I legitimately thought, okay, Rebellion is next month. It ought to be somewhat better than Unbreakable. Unbreakable is just a sort of filler show for WrestleMania weekend. Get some NXT talent booked while they're in town. Tape some TV and chill out. Be cool. And then I watched the pay-per-view and I was like, the roster is paper thin in this thing. They virtually got no roster. Which of course means that the people that they do have, they should treat better. Unfortunately, they don't do that. Now, there are some people that are very excited about this whole Steve Maclin thing. I'm not one of them. I just don't find him to be that entertaining or that interesting, generally. But at the very least, he's not Eric Young. Eric Young is one of the most useless sacks of garbage. I mean, I would rather watch Eric Young than Sami Callihan, but Eric Young is terrible. He's boring. Like, he literally was in the main event and the crowd was chanting, "This is boring." So what did TNA do? Well, they decided to book their next match for Rebellion. The international title, the brand new belt that they just created, that title will be defended. And the match will be, you guessed it, Steve Maclin versus Eric Young. TNA, get fucked.